Okay, so now we fast forward. I patched a couple little spots that were rusted through. Made a patch here on both sides. It was rotted out, and this section here was rotted out, so I put a patch in there. Cleaned and primed all the insides of the cowl, and on the inside of the cowl, inside the car. Primed all inside of the pillars there. So now I have the new cowl panel, and I'm basically going to show you what I do to kind of line it up, mark where I'm going to put my holes that I'm going to be welding. So I'll just take the panel, the lower panel, sits on. It does fit in place pretty nicely. The one thing that you're gonna, this is what I line them up off of, because I have the original firewall in, which has the original strut tower bracket holes. So that's what I'm first lining up to get them as close as they can. So I'll clamp that in place, but for now, just to get an idea of where I'm going to put my spot welds, I'm going to just set it in place, get them close there, and go around with the Sharpie and mark probably about every 2 inches. Let me see. I do one there. Probably about 1 every 2 inches. That's normally how I do it right there. And I'll take that off, use my air hole puncher that I shown in one of my other videos. I'll pop all those holes in. I'll put holes along here that go into that inner cowl panel, side panel, all the way up. There'll be a couple holes here that I'll weld shut. So I'll make all those holes, prep them, and then we'll start welding that panel in. Now you can see all the holes that I put in it, prepped them. I tacked it in place a couple spots just to take my vice grips. I use a bunch of vice grips to hold everything down, which you'll see in a second when I start welding the panel on. But after you get it somewhat in place, I just welded it in about 4 spots. I would always take your upper cowl, put it on, check your spots, make sure everything's going to line up. I line it up with the holes there, make sure it sits on the crease there the way it should. There's kind of an indent there on both sides that line up so it sits flush on that groove, because in the end you're going to weld this upper cowl on the top lip and that bottom lip the whole way across. So if everything looks alright, you're good to weld it. Just make sure that you can get the panels drawn tight down onto the cowl side panels and along the firewall. I like to start from the center and work the way out. If you have a bunch of vice grips, you can just put some along the whole way so you don't bunch it up. If you start from the outside and work in, you could have a little bit of a bubble there that you won't get down. So I start from the inside out. I'll vice grip it all down and then I'll start welding. Skipping forward, now we got the lower cowl welded in place. I'm going to show you here what I do once I get that in place. First thing, grind down the welds flush so your new panel is going to sit on top. If you don't grind down your welds, and if they stick above, your upper cowl is going to sit up rock on top of those welds. So I grind them flush, prep that surface like I said, up here it's going on both edges of that metal. There'll be holes, which I'll show you in the upper cowl, and then seam sealing and priming. Now I tape off these edges here just so I don't spray this primer onto where I'm about to weld, because that'll be wicked welding onto that. So I coat this a couple times with some good black primer, and then seam seal the spots. These are where I welded in underneath here, this lower cowl. I just put some seam sealer on there because there could be some pinholes in that weld, and then any water that's going down in your cowl is going to get into those first, rust that out. So I seam seal over top of that on both sides just so it protects them from rusting out. And on this side you got the top hat for the for the inside heater box, and you want to seam seal around that also, because any of the water that you get is going to come down there, sit on that, and that metal top hat's just welded onto the lower cowl, and water's just going to get right in between them, rust it out. That's why all of these Mustangs rust in the cowl area, because they're sitting, water's just sitting on there. So seam sealing around that top hat, the welds that I made on that lower cowl there, just to protect it from water here in the future. So everything on this is going to be really protected and coated, so it's going to last. Also, I throw a couple coats of primer on the bottom of the upper cowl before putting that on, because once you have that in the car, it's going to be a little bit tough to spray all that. So I spray everything beforehand. Now I'm going to set upper cowl onto the lower cowl, vice grip it all in place, and weld the hole shut. And then we'll cut to that being on, and then the only thing I'll have to do is grind down those welds and the cowl will be on. And there's the final product, upper cowl in place. I also threw the fender extensions on also, just so I can finish up the front end so it wasn't hanging as much. As you can see, how I prepped that upper cowl panel just about the same as the bottom. I do about probably every 2 inches roughly. You could do more, you could do less. It just depends on how you prefer. So this is just how I feel comfortable with. The thing's really welded on tight, but that's what you're looking for in the end. Now I'll just go back, grind all the welds down flush, and that'll be completely finished off. But I saved the grinding for last, so I do everything at once, all the other welds that I did. But there it is. Hopefully that was a good representation of cowl removal and replacement on one of these 6970s. Like I said before, a 65 to 68 is fairly the same process. Just a little bit different shapes. There's 2 top hats underneath the upper cowl on all the other years. But if you have a 6970, hopefully this helped you in any way. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We'll move on to the next part on this car. I'm going to rebuild door hinges and hang the doors, start cutting off the back end. So thanks for watching and have a nice day.